The 35th General Congregation of the Society of Jesus was held at the beginning of the year 2008. In Decree 2, titled "The Fire That Kindles Other Fires," a line reads thus: "Our lives must provoke the questions, who are you, that you do these things, and that you do them in this way? Who are you, that you do these things, and that you do them in this way?" Through this, the members of the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, are exhorted to manifest, especially in the ceaseless world of noise and simulation, a strong sense of the sacred, inseparably joined to involvement in the world. These words can well be used to summarize the challenges that the gospel text of today places before us. The background of these verses of the gospel text is the episode in which Jesus washes the feet of his disciples. It is a gesture that is not merely symbolic or only a lesson in humility. It is a prophetic gesture. Jesus is showing through this prophetic gesture what his disciples are expected to do, what his disciples are expected to be. Jesus wanted their actions to stem from what they are expected to be. The German mystic Meister Eckhart says very beautifully, "You should bother less about what you ought to do and think more about what you ought to be, because if your being were good, then your works would shine forth brightly." So Jesus wanted their actions to stem from their being. Today's verses begin after Judas has gone out. He has decided not to be part of what Jesus expects him to be. He has decided to opt out, and Jesus has to let him go. It is in this context, and even in the midst of impending betrayal and deceitfulness, that Jesus gives a new command. To be sure, the command per se is not new. It forms part of the Torah in the Old Testament. What is new about it is the command to love has its roots in the incarnation. God's love for the world was so great that God could only send his Son as a perfect manifestation of that love. God loved the world before the Son by sending messengers, by sending prophets, by sending blessings. And now, in the fullness of time, God showed that total, unconditional, incomprehensible, unfathomable love by sending his Son. The second reading from the book of Revelation confirms this when it affirms that because of the incarnation, the dwelling of God is on earth and among us sinful human beings. God dwells with humans and manifests that love to them in wiping away every tear from their eye and taking away their crying, their mourning, and their pain. The disciples are asked to enter into that same love. They will show that they have entered into this love by keeping the commandment of love, by loving tangibly and with no expectation of reward. It is the sure and tangible sign of the disciples abiding in Jesus and Jesus abiding in them. This love will also be a sign to the world of who the disciples are and what they do when they do what they do. The first Christian community continued to give this sign because of which many people experienced it and were drawn to their way of life. The first reading of today narrates how Paul and his companions were able to transform the lives of many, not merely because they preached the word of God verbally, but because they lived out the word that they preached. They were unafraid to continue to love even in the midst of persecution and rejection because their love did not depend on the response of the other. What mattered to them was that love must be proclaimed. What mattered to them was that the love that God had made incarnate in Jesus was to be made known to all. It was a love that had to be shared. What mattered to them was that no matter how arduous the road ahead of them was, no matter how terrifying the terrain, they would continue to persevere in love, and they would continue to persevere to love. They were thus instrumental in giving us a glimpse of those who encountered them, of the new heaven and the new earth that the second reading of today speaks about. The first heaven and first earth was a heaven and earth that had not the privilege of witnessing and experiencing incarnation. It had passed away because of the coming of Christ and his gift of unconditional and eternal love. The new heaven and new earth that the first Christian community experienced in Jesus and wanted to share with others was a situation in which there would be no more sea and therefore no more negatives, because all that was negative would fade with the coming of the positive, unrestricted, and unreserved love. Today, more than 2,000 years after the inauguration of that new heaven and new earth, the challenge remains. The Christian community of today has to waken to this challenge and call to give a glimpse of what was through the coming of Christ, and so what can be even today. It will do this when individual members of the new community take on the responsibility of becoming Christ to those who do not yet know him or have not yet had the privilege of encountering Christ. It will do this when the community as a whole, in communion and as one, is united in that love which Jesus brought with his coming. It will do this when those who encounter any Christian today will look at them and ask about them. Who are you? That you do these things and that you do them in this way. You are so different from so many that we encounter because your love is unconditional. Your love is magnanimous. Your love keeps no record of rights or of wrongs. How is it possible for you to continue to love consistently and constantly? To love with no expectation of reward, even when the other is ungrateful. And they ask again, because our inspiration is the Lord. Who are you that you do these things and that you continue to do them in